So welcome. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate your interest in the following webinar presentation about whether or not an MBA or a specialized master's degree might be best for you. And so please feel free if you have questions or comments. I'll probably be able to address those sort of as I go through the content in the slides. And feel free also to contact me directly because I am partially recording this as well, not just as a presentation live, but as something that will be on the web as a resource afterwards. And so it is gradecon at odu.edu. And I can point you as well because we have other master's programs with ODU and just in general, right? So I personally, Jay Walker, I'm an associate professor of economics. I apologize, I didn't introduce myself, as well as the program director for the MA program in economics here at ODU. And so I have, and I'll actually get to that shortly. Here we go. So why consider graduate education in business and economics? That's sort of like the first piece of what I was going to talk about. And then I was just going to give an overview of the MBA degree versus a specialized master's. And so why should you perhaps trust me, or why might I know more or less? I have a bachelor's degree in economics, and so I will admit econ was sort of my initial love, econ/finance. I then got an MBA in 2001 from the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And then I continued on and got a PhD from the University of Memphis in 2012. And so I have took MBA classes myself. I have taught in 3 different MBA programs as an instructor. I've taught numerous economics courses, and now I'm the director of an MA program in economics. And so I've seen both programs from different points of view as both a student and as an instructor, as sort of a manager, at least for the MA in economics. And so hopefully through time, I may have picked up some things and appreciate some of the differences. And so when I think about the MBA and what it offers for students, I think more of a broad-based business education. Right. So you're going to be taking classes from faculty that represent the different disciplines from all the disciplines normally within the College of Business where you're taking your program or where you're matriculating. And so there are core areas. You're going to have management, finance, marketing. You're going to be talking about strategy. Normally there's a capstone project where you talk about case studies and certain scenarios and how to handle those in live business situations, talking about leadership. A lot of focus on professional networking. You deal with leadership as an issue, and you can think of sort of like the typical career paths, where it might be general management. Many people end up in consulting. Finance is certainly possible, although with an NMA in economics, it is possible as well. And then entrepreneurship, right? And so we have these different specialties, and this is something I would recommend, and I'll come back to that shortly, that you can look at because MBA programs also individually, it's not just all of them are the same. Some offer more specialization than others. Some offer certain classes in the core of the courses that you take. And so there is difference among MBA programs as well as something to let me know, or excuse me. I was reading, there was a question that came in. I was just trying to see if I needed to address it now. Okay, of course. Thank you for that comment. I will certainly bring it up. And so specialized master's degrees. And so as you were thinking about perhaps a master's in economics, again, perhaps my favorite, master's in finance, a master's in supply chain, a master's in marketing, this is more of the specific area that you want to focus in, right? So if you love marketing, this is the idea. You already know that this is sort of what you want your career trajectory and focus to be, then perhaps that might better fit your needs and or your goals, right? And so according to programs, and this is a trend that's been going on in master's degrees for the last few years, you have sort of this idea that sometimes the duration may be shortening. And so based on which program you choose, some degrees may be available in as little as 1 year to 2 years. And so master's degree, 1 to 2 years. Personally, this is my personal opinion. I understand that you're missing out on working in the labor market, and so there are real time costs. But I tend to think that, especially if you were considering an MA, perhaps this might be something where those skills need to be developed a little bit more over time, because we focus a lot on data analytics. Even though we're not a data analytics degree, it is one of our focus is to get students where they are ready and able to work as data analysts, right? And this will come out a little bit more when we talk about economics in particular. And so when you have a particular career path or you have a job title in mind, and I will say some of those here in a little bit from looking online, perhaps specialized degree better fits that. And so a little bit more into the MA in economics, right? And so we tend to focus more on economic theory, right? So you'll get more economic theory, more applied data analysis. And so this is something that I've talked to when we have students who are considering coming over from data analytics or considering an MA in data analytics, and they're saying, well, how is this different? It's like, you're talking about data analytics. Here's an MA in data analytics. Why? And so we combine this theory with the data analysis, and this becomes powerful when you can talk about policy changes, and it speaks to certain employers or certain career trajectories in particular. We really want to focus on quantitative and analytical skill development. This is more like, you can think of economic consulting. Government has typically been one of the primary end employers of our graduates. You can work in finance, certainly, although MS in finance may still fit that a little bit more if that's your wheelhouse. Talking about policy research, right? And so this is comparison, right, with MS in finance, where we're perhaps a little bit more theory and policy focused. Where corporate finance, you're really talking more about the workings of finance in a corporate environment. And so course content comparison, looking at the MBA, left-hand column here, the MA in economics. And so, I'm not going to tell you that the MA in economics owns all of this, right? Even as a director. When I think about like leadership and management, you're certainly going to get more of that in the MBA. Discussions of that, talking about case studies, how to apply certain theories and concepts in settings as a manager. I think that's strong, right? And so that we're certainly a little bit going to be limited in that. Data analytics, when I think about the MBA, this will vary. And this is where, if you're considering different departments, you're considering different programs, I would recommend like looking at the curriculum, also talking to someone with the curriculum off, like just with the department office or the program office, because they can often tell you more if the option or the focus that you want is available. And so this can vary, right? So you might be able to take specializations with certain programs or certain universities, where with some, it's more of a fixed path, right? And so data analytics, that is one of our core, this is one of our wheelhouse things that we're talking about more in our courses. We have a 4-course sequence that focuses on that through your time with us, at least in our program, right? Finance and investment, stronger typically in MBA courses. You're going to get some of it in the MA in economics. And if you get into an MA in economics that has more of a focus in financial economics, that would be more so, right? And so research and modeling, again, some talking at the MA, this would probably vary, again, according to program. And this is really going to be another key area for an MA in economics. It's going to be extensive when you're talking about research skills, taking data, trying to answer specific questions with it, data visualizations. I remember my own MBA courses, been a few years, as I mentioned, but it was there. We were still working in many of the programs that people are still using. You're learning more. I thought we were interpreting data a lot more, learning how to understand sheets of numbers. And so with the MA in economics, you're not only going to get that, but you're going to be learning to prepare those numbers and those models. And so looking at an MBA, skills gained in each program, I'm thinking leadership, right? Strategy, concepts, trying to implement changes inside of an organization, talking about teamwork, how to build a strong team, because it's this management focus, right? Operations, that was certainly more of a focus. I can remember discussing things in supply chain, talking about just-in-time inventory management, talking about like how to maximize inventories in terms of profits over time. Again, that was much different than my graduate study in economics. Decision making, right? So we do have some decision making discussion when we talk about game theory, but it's going to have a little bit different feel than the MBA. And again, look at MA in economics, econ modeling, data analysis, policy evaluation. Those words just sort of feel different to me when I think about it. Research methods, right? And so we're talking more quantitative focus. We're talking about dealing with data directly, that sort of thing. Career path comparison. And so just on average, or just typically, these are sort of the ideas that you might have, right? And so that's not to say that you can't end up working in different fields. The last time I had seen, most workers in the United States change careers like 6 to 7 times, or at least change companies during their career. And so it's possible that you're going to wear different hats. But if you're looking at an MBA, more typical that you might end up in consulting, banking and finance, MA in economics tend to be less so working in a consulting field. Right. When you're talking about government and policy, certainly there are MBAs that tread in those waters. MA in economics, this is much more of like a core area that you might be considering over time. Economic research, relatively rare, very much a core thing, right? And so I think of our own graduates, and I'll come back to this shortly because when we get to the salary part, I'll talk about where you might look yourself to be able to find information about the program in the university, about what kind of jobs that you might expect. And so data analytics or data science, some in MBA, strong in MA in economics. And so when I look at those bottom two, econ research, data science, analytics, a lot of our people have ended up going into those. And that is one of the key goals of the program, right? So it's not necessarily surprising that we are placing there. We attract students who like that kind of stuff. Income comparisons. And so I'll admit, I searched online. I recommend you doing the same thing. I came up with a couple of sources that seemed relatively reputable from what I knew. And so here's information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics with the job title economist. So envision this for the MA in economics. And so the median annual wage was around $115,000 in May 2024. And where they worked, you can think federal government, $140,000, scientific research, management, technical consulting. And so notice there's a range here, 140, state government, 74, right? So government tends to pay a little bit less or pays less, but you might anticipate different benefits or different working conditions relative to perhaps scientific research, right? And you can see economists here at 115,000, and we're relatively higher than social sciences or the other social scientists, and then total occupations, right? And so I move on, income comparison for the MBA, again, using BLS. And so I could not find the education designation. So I went with top executives. This is what we're hoping for, I think, with an MBA. And when I was working on my MBA, perhaps this was my long goal before I realized that perhaps really just a professor is what I wanted to be all along. I did work for 5 years after my MBA, but I ended up getting drawn back into academia. And so you can see here, looking at chief executives, clearly 200,000. I mean, we can count, right? So 115,000, 200,000. But this is when I think of $200,000 wages, these are probably CEOs of large corporations, right? And so not everyone that gets an MBA, this is their goal, is to lead the C-suite. And so you can see that in different sort of job titles, right? And so the median annual wage for general and operations managers was 100,000, right? The median annual wage for chief executives was 200,000. At the end of the day, with these specialized master's degrees or the MBA, you are increasing the net present value of your future income, right? So either way, you are still, increasing what your expected future pay to be. And on some level, what you select into in your interest, I think will affect that, right? And so it could be higher than these medians, it could be lower than these medians. So I did pull up another. And so here I found on payscale.com, I have seen studies that have used the data out of this. So I do feel like it's relatively reputable, probably, but confirm for yourself, right? This is one of those things you're about to invest or you're thinking about investing 1 to 2 years of your life and tuition and fees in a diploma or in a degree to get a benefit. So you should think about it and do your own homework. So Master of Arts Economics degree, I just overview from PayScale, $83,000 a year, right? And so I look down here and it says economics jobs by salary. Look, what were the first things that came up? Data analyst, research analyst, data scientist, economist, senior data scientist, analytics manager, business analyst. So that analyst term comes in. I'll admit my first job with MBA, but I was an econ undergrad. I was a financial analyst with a large property and casualty insurance firm. Worked there for 3 years. And then I was like an account analyst or an assistant buyer for a couple of years after that with like a regional chain store. They were retail. And that I think is right. So that could have been an MA in economics. That could have been an MBA, right? But I was an econ undergrad with an MBA. And so one thing that you can do, and I always recommend this. So if you're not aware, and so if you don't already, I'll make a play at the end. Please follow our LinkedIn page, and I'll have a little QR that will come up if you're watching this later. And so I went into LinkedIn and I typed in Old Dominion University, right? And so Old Dominion University from the search bar. You click on Old Dominion University, and you go down and you can see alumni. And so on alumni, you can actually move over and you can see what they studied. And so right here is business administration and management. Now, I will say that does not delineate between master's and undergrad, but you can at least see people who study that at ODU. So you just click on this, but I'm going to click on economics because I know this, and you go down, and so here are some people who studied economics at ODU, and you can see job titles. That is not necessarily income information, but you could get an idea, and from there you might be, well, like this probably has this kind of income profile, or this kind of probably had this career path to get there. Because you can see people, they often list their experience. This is a great way to sort of see where people end up and what they may do after the fact. So you could search Old Dominion University or Strome College of Business, and then from there you can also do what they studied. I think the MBA page, just like us, right? So we have followers on our MA page. You could look and see who follows and look where they work, and that might give you an idea. The first time I found this online, I was like really excited about it. I realized like, because students always ask this, like, where will I probably work? What will I probably make? And I was like, well, here's what, like, these are the people who either went to our program or came to school here, and you can see exactly what it is. Here are, I've got some statistics nationally, but here's the real, like, here's a name, here's where they went. And feel free, by the way, I know we've had some people that have sort of come in as this is going on. If you have questions or concerns, don't feel like you need to wait until the end. Ask them along the way. Excuse me, and I can sort of address those. I'll kind of police it and see what seems most appropriate. And so here, Master of Business Administration degree, oops, you'll notice project manager, right? And so $91,000, CFO, senior financial analyst, that starts to sound a little bit like one of the jobs we might have seen on the last page as well. HR manager, marketing director, financial analyst, director of operations. And so here gives you a range, right? And so these are just some what payscale.com is saying is some typical job titles, along with some of the salary information. So this one does have the MBA coming in above the MA, right? And so I think it really is, it's according to your path, sort of your interest within that. At the end of the day, your net present value of income is going up relative to a bachelor's degree, whichever one you choose. So who should choose an MA or MBA, right? If you really think that you'd like to get into a leadership or a management role, and this is the situation that I most often see about people, or excuse me, of students in my classes. This is this sort of like the stereotype I've developed over years, where it's like, I got a nursing degree, or I got a degree in engineering, or I got a degree somewhere in arts and sciences, and I want to like move up in my organization to be management. Like people who want to change careers after the fact. That often is the profile of people when we don't see them coming straight from undergraduate with the MBA. It's a big it's not the majority. I don't know. It may be the majority. We do have someone from the MBA program with us, Everett. You probably know better than me, but it's common. I'll say that. People who value networking, brand recognition. If you like case-based, team-oriented learning, right? And so you should be getting cases, you should be working in teams a lot in your classes, right? It's the same thing. So now we turn to the MA in economics, specialized degree, more my specialty, but you can think about this if you want an MA in marketing, just pick an MA in marketing, and you're going to be able to put in some specific profiles, right? So if you like data-driven decision making, it's tough to see how this isn't a trend in society and in organizations. We are awash in a sea of data, right? If you're interested in economic policy, finance, and analytics, if you want strong quantitative and research skills, or if you think that you might want to go into government, academic careers, we are a good segue. Like if you think you may want to get a PhD, right? We help with that first year in a PhD program, where we help make the difference. How to decide. So at the end of the day, I would say think about, I had someone say this to me. It's been the last couple of years, and maybe I should have realized it sooner. But what do you want your day to look like? Um, I am relatively social, and so before, when I was doing analyst work, it was not a lot of interaction with individuals, a lot of me and spreadsheets. And that's why I like being a professor. Like still have that quantitative aspect, but I still interact with students and my colleagues a lot. And so like when you think about what your desired industry is, what your career goals are, and at the end of the day, what do you want your day to look like? What are your skills and interests? Is it really more quantitative? Do you want to be the one preparing reports, or do you want to just be the one interpreting reports? Is it quantitative or leadership? Think about program duration, cost, and return on investment. And I would encourage you to ask whatever program that you might be interested in, even if it's not at ODU, understand this. Where have people gotten jobs? How long does it typically take to get to the program? And most program directors or most people working with programs would know those things. Why the MA in economics at ODU? Well, you got to get a small sales pitch if you've gotten this far. What makes us sort of different? And I can certainly say good things as someone who teaches in the MBA program about that as well. At the MA, we have a strong quantitative and analytical curriculum. Just watch one of the open house videos that you can also find out on YouTube if you're interested in learning more about the program. I don't want to go into it as much here. We've got a sequence of quantitative courses, and our hope is to move you through and get you ready to like be a productive analyst, data analyst, get you productive and ready to go into a PhD program, and to let you know what you need to do to prepare yourself for those options, right? We've got faculty who are research active. They are very well versed working with some of the newest techniques and softwares. I'm aging a little bit out of that, but you know what? This is why they don't have me in some of those core courses in the master's degree or the MA at the moment. We've had good job placement, I believe. We've got an active and growing alumni group. Um, and I can talk to people about that too if you're interested. And there's flexibility, right? You can go to different things. And so at the conclusion, and so by the way, this didn't necessarily need to take the full hour. That's what I liked about this when I was coming up with the idea to have a short program or a talk about it. 20, 25 minutes is probably enough to throw the main ideas or at least discuss the main ideas some. And at the end of the day, those who are interested should put some of their own time into thinking like which program best fits and where do I think I may want to be. And at the end of the day, there's probably no one size fits all answer. If that's what you were looking for, I'm not sure that I'm your person. But of course, then I would probably say the master's in economics, but that's not true, right? So it really depends on your individual goals. A key takeaway, MBAs in general offer more breadth. You're going to get exposure to different subject areas across the college, like a college of business, I apologize, or a specialized degree will offer depth within a specific area. And, it's according, right? It depends. That's always a nice answer in econ. It depends, basically, like, well, is this correct? Well, it depends on what you're assuming and what your goals are. And so I encourage you to do some thinking about those things when you're considering which degree might be correct for you. And so with that said, I'm looking, not sure that I had any questions that came in directly. Say, hmm, so I did receive this one. Okay. And so I've got one from home. Thank you. So is the program offered online or in person or hybrid? And so I would say, and so just in general, I would say that many universities have traditionally, these programs have been in person, right? I think ODU has both a fully online and perhaps hybrid. You could probably take both seated and online courses from my understanding in the MBA program. As of this moment in May of 2025, the MA program is only offered in a seated delivery method. We are planning, but you would have to follow up with me according to when you watch this, um, for a online launch in fall of 2026. So uh, that should be possible, right? According. And so we've been planning, talking about it for quite a while. We've been approved. It's just operationalizing it is now we're planning fall 2026. Thank you for that question. And so I apologize. All I see is the username uh, on Zoom eGroup. Like how much math or how math heavy are these courses? And so it depends as well. So I would encourage you. So I'll start with the MA and then I'll move to the MBA. So with the MA, we have three prerequisites that we recommend. We recommend one college level calculus course, one college level statistics course, and then undergraduate course in intermediate macroeconomics or microeconomics. And so that means that you would have at least had to take one prior economics course to that. And our plan, because we have one math course the first semester, it's called mathematical economics, is beyond that Cal 1 class, the Calculus 1 class. We're going to teach you the additional tools that you need to get through the master's. If the PhD track within the MA is your goal, then I would talk to you like I am also the sort of the chief advisor for the master's program about you would consider some additional math courses either as electives or some other classes you might want to take. So there is math, there is coding, right? And so this is where I don't quite know, and I'll admit this in the MBA program, I don't quite know the prerequisites in terms of mathematics, but I don't believe that there's a calculus prerequisite. I believe it would just be college algebra. And so you're going to be using quantitative methods. And I teach one of the first classes in the MBA program. Um, uh, it's just economics for managers. There's a two-course sequence in the updated course sequence for ODU. And I use a little bit of calculus, right? Differentiation. So I think more algebra, and maybe if you use calculus, at least at ODU, it's going to be less. You'll see it, but it will be less intensive in an MBA program than it is in an MA, right? So math heavy, I think it's relative, right? And so this is where individual programs, because I know, so two competitors or two other MA programs that are relatively near us, Johns Hopkins to the north in Maryland, and then you have Towson, which is over in sort of the greater Baltimore area as well. Towson has different prerequisites to enter the program for the MA. And so I would just recommend start looking at prereqs, comparing curriculum, and seeing it's like, well, you have to take more class to get in, math to get in, excuse me. If more math to get in, this probably assumes that there's more math during as well. My thought is that you're going to need it. Is it going to be the death knell, the thing that really makes the difference? Now, that according, maybe, maybe not, according to which program you're in. Oh, another. So, do students need to have an undergraduate degree in business to be considered for admission to the MA program in economics? If not, what are the prerequisites? And so this is relatively universal. Okay. It's not just ODU that would be this way. So, and I'd say it's for the MBA as well, especially for the MBA, because you have people who want to change careers that like an undergraduate business degree is not required. You might have to take like an extra prerequisite, and this is what sometimes happens with us as well in the MA. So you don't have to be undergraduate in business. You don't have to be undergraduate in economics to get into the MA or the MBA. But for the MA in economics, there are three prereqs for us. These might be different. Again, so it's one undergraduate course in calculus, one undergraduate course in statistics, and one undergraduate course in intermediate macroeconomics. And so, right, so you could have a literature degree, right, and take those courses, and we would be in like we would consider you, right? So you've met the prerequisites. There are other sort of prereqs in terms of, excuse me, other conditions for admission. And so this is something that I can pull up, ODU MA Economics Admissions Standards. Let's see if I can do this on the fly. I do this in classes and it seems a little less weird. So requirements. So this is from the MA page here at ODU. To apply, one letter of recommendation, an average undergraduate GPA of at least 3.0. Although sometimes I can tell you that we do offer provisional admissions, and this happens as well in MBA programs, right? So if you don't have a 3.0 and you've worked, if you don't have a 3.0 grade point average and you've taken the GRE, right? If you've got a good GRE score, then provisional admission is possible, or regular admission if you've got a good GRE score. And then also for MA programs, this is a question that I often get, and I'm glad to see this last question because it made me think of this. For a PhD, many times, for PhD programs, the GRE is not optional. But with MA programs, they often are optional, or they're becoming more so. So if you have a GPA of 3.3 or higher on a 4.0 scale, the MA is optional. with your application, right? And even if you don't have that, you might be able to do a provisional admission, but that becomes, then it's more of a personal process than the admission. And so I do see a question in Zamam. Do you need me to, can you type the question? Is that okay? It's just a little bit easier for me to control things that way. Thank you for having your hand up. Oh, yeah, yeah, more than welcome. No, thank you for coming. Yeah, yeah, thank you for your interest. I appreciate it. Um, and so with that said, let me come back. Yeah, some of this. Okay. Okay. So another question here. So on the curriculum requirements, so we have some live time people looking through the information about the MA. A maximum of 6 credit hours of 500 level courses approved for graduate credit may be applied towards the degree. Would we accept transfer credits from other institutions, or must they be from ODU? And so Everett could address this probably as well, if he wants to sort of put in for the MBA. We at the MA follow the guidelines as set forth in the graduate catalog, whereby we can bring in transfer credits if they are with a letter grade of B or higher. And I think the maximum is that 6 hours. And so would these courses be considered eligible to count towards the MA? Yes. Right. Yes, they would be considered eligible. I have a current student in the MA program now who transferred from another university. She transferred it, I think, 2 courses in. Above 2 courses, you have to get an override for the system, I believe, or you have to like have a special request, but normally up to 6 hours, I don't think is a big problem. Yeah, thank you for the question. Those are good, making me think. Okay. Would be great if you would share information about dates for the spring MA economics program. Okay, this is great. So thank you for this question. So let me just come over. So in Zaman. So I purposely actually did not talk much about specifics about our program, just in case. And it's not a problem because this is question and answer. People can skip over when this gets to be YouTube. If you go to our MA in economics at ODU LinkedIn page, and you go, is it details? I think it's here. And so you could look at the spring 20. Oh, that's the newsletter. Where's the, I apologize, home. Okay, so we had a virtual open house that's on YouTube. And so this would talk about information like about applying, specifics about us. This was more just speaking generally. But if you look at that same link that I'm looking at here, it's just ODU academics programs. I'll actually put that into the chat as well. And I'll send that to everyone. What does it talk about? Program highlights. I think it's down here on this left hand. Yeah, it's here. For admission to the economics program. It is online, and for the spring, so we do rolling admissions. And so this part that I've highlighted that you can see in blue. So priority consideration for assistantships for the fall comes if you complete your application prior to March 1st. And priority consideration for spring is if you complete your application through the system before August 1st. And so just please keep those in mind. We do rolling admissions. So like if you can apply anytime between now and August for a fall. admission. And even like for domestic students, with like a month or so before class starts, it's still relatively easy to get people through the process. But if there are international students, just with visa and trying to get things coordinated, um, earlier is better. And so August 1st, I think tends, looking at other programs, this tends to, I think, fall pretty good. I think embassies are less busy with student visa appointments for spring arrivals relative to fall arrivals. Um, and this also just gives us, well, here's our batch. Let's talk about how many positions we have and how we can allocate assistantships. And so again, so like this is ours, but I would recommend to look at this on other websites. And I know that the MBA program here at ODU does rolling admissions as well. But I do think that they have, it's easier to be considered for assistantships if you're going to have your like application ends with application completed with these same approximate dates. And so I think these are good questions. And typically, and so I'll go ahead and throw this out. There is a website. If you're interested in graduate study in economics, I send this to every student who I end up contacting. So MA or PhD, the American Economic, well, so if you're interested in studying in the United States, I apologize. So there are other places outside of the United States. You can go down and where is it at? Here, the suggested application timeline. And so even if you want an MBA, I can tell you that these dates are not bad to think to consider. From my experience applying for undergraduate, master's degree, and PhD, and being around business schools now for quite a few years as an adult, you know, now, so we're in May, or as of today, we're in May. This would be a good time to start thinking about fall of 26 earliest, I would think. And so we did have the question about the spring, right? So you could still do some spring admits. Most PhD intakes are going to be in the fall semester. I'm not sure, at least personally, I don't know of many, if any, PhD programs that intake in the spring. It's almost always a fall cohort. And so now to September is a good time to research schools. And this is the idea for starting in the fall. With us, just remember August 1st is that cutoff for assistantship consideration. Around September, October, you practice or take the GRE. I would recommend practicing more for the GRE. But remember, for the master's degree, it is optional. For MBAs, by the way, the GMAT standardized exam has always traditionally been the standardized exam. Many programs now have that as optional. Just look into that because those exams can cost like 150 or 200 US dollars. And so that can be an expense that you might be able to avoid if your grades are good enough as an undergraduate. So take the GRE, solicit letters of recommendation. If you're thinking of applying in October, I would recommend talking to professors now about letters of recommendation, having that in mind. The good thing about taking the GRE like in September or October is you can maybe retake it in November. You might be able to do better. But just think, if you're thinking for the fall, December, January, this is PhD programs, right? And so what happens is PhD market, those applications kind of clear. And notice our deadline is like in March. And so sometimes people that don't get into PhD programs, they'll think about master's programs for those that want to eventually get a PhD. And so it just sort of rolls, right? And so February to April, acceptance decisions are released. Internally, we shoot for April 1st to announce assistantship offers, initial assistantship offers for the fall. And it's a little bit looser for the spring. It's according to when I can find out, or we can find out, because it's not just us. The MBA program tries to figure out how many positions they can support if people are interested in assistantships. And then August, graduate programs begin. Spring, again, you can back it up, but this is still doable. If you're thinking about spring 26, And personally, I think that spring, sometimes you might be able to sneak in just because there's fewer people that kind of apply for that spring intake. Uh, you might be able to, it might be at the margin a little bit easier to find funding if you have programs that accept students in the spring. And so hopefully I answered those questions. Oh, so here we go. So do those 6 hours. So I did jump off. This is a very me thing to do. I got excited and talked about other possibilities. So to return to the question about the 6 hours to transfer in to the program, do those 6 hours need to be in economics? And so for transfer credits, and I believe this would be the case for MBA programs as well. So, oops. So if you're transferring in credits, they typically need to be something that would be considered equivalent to the courses in the program. So like if you took a mathematical economics course, and so this is the listings for our MA program. I apologize for not explaining. It's just I know this curriculum well. Then I would like we would look at, well, is this equivalent to what we have here? And so if yes, you got to be your better, then we transfer it in. The situations that I've been most likely to see, or I've most frequently seen, is when students have a elective course that they've taken somewhere else that we can bring in, or if you've taken like a graduate level data analytics course, because we have restrictive electives within economics, but we also allow students to go and take classes across the university if they don't, if like their thing is like, I want this data analytics course, or I want to go to PhD, so I want to take this math class. I would consider that as a potential elective course within our coursework because I know the goal. And so that would be a situation where the 6 hours don't have to be an econ, but just think it needs to fit in that curriculum. And so that's going to be, if you're transferring or you're thinking about transferring work in, it has to be above the undergraduate level, one, and it typically sort of has to fit the curriculum some way, right? So it's either the like exact or similar course, or it would fit in arguably as one of the electives in the program curriculum. Okay, and so one new message. Ooh. How about class sizes? Lots of questions coming in the MA economics and the MBA. So typically speaking, so this could vary quite a bit according to university. I will just say that. So if you look across universities, some with larger programs, you might have courses. I think in MBA programs between 30, 50 starts to seem really big. Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was in a cohort system. I think my courses were always 50 students. At and so the University of Ole Miss was like the state flagship university in Mississippi. And so that was pretty large compared to what I hear at many universities. Here, I think that number fluctuates. Probably 30 would be kind of large from what I know of the MBA program. The MA Econ, it does matter according to which course it is. Oftentimes, our classes would be 10 to 15, but sometimes, like our econometrics courses, this is our quantitative series, we share those. And so the PhD in finance comes over and takes some of those classes. Some of the other graduate degrees within the college comes over and takes them. And so those may push up a little bit more, but at least for the MA Econ, these courses, I think, rarely get above 20. They're relatively small. You will know, or it won't be many weeks until you know the people in your class, right? You're not going to feel swallowed. This is not like a large undergraduate pit classroom. A pit classroom just where you seat 100 or 150 students. And so which of the two, so I apologize, I don't want to skip anything. So which programs would give me more of the hands-on experience? Um, so there's two ways that I can interpret that. And so one of those, which one would you work more directly with faculty members? And so again, I think this would probably vary according to institution and size of the program. In the MA Econ here, we don't have a thesis requirement, but we do have a capstone project that requires you to complete um, an economic research project, right? And so that's something that you work with a faculty member. And so that's directly working on something with a faculty member, but it's also, these projects are also projects that you would look like something you could do in a job, right? And so we have at least the MA Econ here, and I think many quantitatively Masters of Arts in Economics programs have these types of series of courses where you're using live data, you're creating data visualizations, you're trying to work on and or solve or figure out the relationship between two things um, using data. And these are examples of things that you would do in the labor market and or during a PhD program. So MBA programs, I think it depends also the size of the program, the structure of the classes. You're probably working in groups a lot. You're working on case studies relatively more often. And so you do have more. So in terms of hands-on between faculty, I think there's notably more interaction between faculty and students. But also, I mean, personally, this is me as someone who teaches in this MBA program here, but I've taught in other universities too. I feel like we're not giving students a fair deal if we're not trying to talk about either like work experiences or trying to structure assignments more like what they are outside. And so I apologize if that is not exactly a straight on answer. I think both types of programs give you options for hands on experience. And I will say, students who seek those out, right? And so this is sometimes as simple as asking if you're, like interested and ambitious. I think you will often find professors and faculty who are interested to work with you. And so I got a couple more questions here. We're getting close on the 1 hour time listed. I got one. Which of the two is more complicated? And so in terms, that is that is almost an odd question, and in some way because I think it's according to what kinds of work you find more challenging, perhaps. So with case studies in group work and talking through into like those sorts of things can be difficult on some level just because you have to coordinate your work output with individuals within a group, and it's not always the easiest, and you're working on deadlines. And so, in terms of complicated that way, you're building a different skill set. Whereas if perhaps like downloading, cleaning data, trying to figure out how like software programs and coding work. And so I'm largely talking about our program because we have a pretty heavy focus on that applied data analysis piece. And so if you think coding and working with large data sets is more complicated, that could be more so. And so we've got another question coming in. I'm liking this. I thought we were going to be done early, but it's always good to have interest from people. Does ODU have career fairs, networking events, or activities to help students find jobs or internships? And so I think this is a question that students should ask universities and programs in particular. Where do students work? What services and what support are you able to offer in terms of job search? What kind of alumni relationship do you have? How easy are internships to find, or have there been success with students finding internships? So the simple response to is, does ODU have career fairs, networking? Yes, of course. And I think that most universities have this. I don't think that we're unique in that. I do think that perhaps there's some things that are unique that might exist here compared to others, partially because of where we're located, right? So we're here in coastal Virginia, which is like 4 hours from Washington, D.C., a couple hours from Richmond. This metropolitan area that we are in, the greater Hampton Roads, Virginia area, has about 1.8 million people. And so you were not necessarily living in like a small college university town. I think that there are opportunities in our region um, for internships and places to work. There are also large cities here on the East Coast that are not relatively far away. We have alumni networks and graduates in many of those places. Again, you can just look on YouTube and see that. And I'm not sure that ODU or the Strome College of Business has started to guarantee students with an internship if they want one, but we have floated that. I mean, there's certainly an internship office and a placement office to help students. And I think that as of this moment of the 6 or 8 students that I've talked to from our MA program who are either looking for internships or for summer work, I have one who still hasn't placed, but I'm not sure. And so notice here, I'm going gender neutral because I don't want to call anyone out. I'm not sure how much they looked until the last couple of weeks. And so that includes both international and domestic students, right? And so with uh, with international students, there is the added layer that you have to be sure that your visa allows you to work off campus. But well, anyway, that's something to worry about. If you're an international student, we have international students who have internships off campus. You just have to make sure and confirm that with the visa office. And so I see another comment that came in. I'm not sure that's one that I have to respond to directly. Thank you for that. Oh, yes. And so there is one comment though. So this is worth asking. And I do think it's something worth considering when considering MBA programs as well, although this is less common. Masters of Arts and Economics programs, as well as many PhD programs they're called STEM. So this is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics designated. And that means for international students, there's a thing called optional practical training where you can work up to 1 year without sponsorship after graduation. With a STEM designation, that can become 3 years without sponsorship. And so it's just something to consider if you're an international student who might consider working after the master's or PhD. And so I see one response coming in from a student asking for a synopsis. We're right at 12:30. And so what I will do, and so I'll say this because I don't want to go over. I know many of you have other appointments. Here in like 3 or 4 days, I'll clean up the video. I'll share it with all of you who register. It'll be out on YouTube soon. And if any of you would like to schedule a time to speak with me about any questions, I'm typically pretty available. And this goes for anyone who may have hung in there and listened to the whole thing on YouTube as well. I think you'll find myself. Everett Judd is also here. He is the recruiter for the MBA program. And I'll stick his contact information too. I know he talks to people. I have video calls with people regularly, normally like a couple or 3 a week. And I know many of those students probably won't end up with us, but I think it's good. I always try to talk about options. And if you love economics, you don't even have to love economics. If you're interested in studying economics, I just assume that we kind of have some things in common. And I'm just excited. I like education, and that's why I became a professor. With that said, just let me hit a couple of things. I'm pretty sure that most of the people here already follow the MA, but please take a moment if you don't. Please follow us. On the MA page, I have or we have updates about application due dates, department news, when we have students presenting. If you want to kind of see what's going on and what you might be able to be a part of, we try to do that here, alumni networking events, that sort of stuff. And so I just want to say thank you. Whether you are interested in an MA, an MBA, or whatever type of graduate education, or if you've decided that maybe graduate education isn't for you, I certainly wish you the best in all your efforts. Thank you for your coming for coming today. Thank you for listening. If you are online later, and have a great day, everyone. So thank you all. I'm just going to